Welcome to the clashing of steel. So, as it appears, I have not done a review on Commander Ambiorix. And so today is that day. Starting with the commander skills, Tier 1 commander skill is the Haste. It gives movement speed, acceleration and reload time. More precisely, reduces reload time. All the upgrades increase these effects: movement speed, acceleration, reload time, also active time, cooldown, and negative ground effect modifier. For Tier 3 skill, Ambiorix has Crippling Shot. It has limited targeting range and rather long cooldown. At first it also might reduce your damage if you don't have it upgraded, but the idea of that skill is knockback, which can ruin opposing charges or just delay your opponents. Upgrades are for increasing damage, cooldown reduction, and of course targeting range. And so for Tier 5 commander skill we have From the Shadows. It increases missile weapon range, reduces your movement speed, reduces your missile dispersion, and negative ground effect modifier. What there is also to note is that all the arrows fired when this skill is active are going to fly with high trajectory, meaning that perhaps even armored legionnaires can dodge them. Upgrades are for range, dispersion, negative ground effect modifier, even a bit armor penetration or armor piercing damage, and of course a bit of recharge time. Okay, so let's head to battle. So, as you can already see, I like to play ranged units with infantry. I also have bought two upgrades, or consumables so to say, the Animal Sacrifice and the Broadhead Arrows. Both of them basically increase my missile weapon damage, and the Animal Sacrifice also gives me a bit of acceleration. The haste ability is actually something you might want to use or can use at the start of the match. It will give you the movement speed to catch up with your team members or just to reach a location or destination you want to go. On this map I actually had a short way to go, so I didn't want to use it. But it would have been valuable. The second and most important value of it is the reload speed reduction, which will significantly increase your rate of fire. So I am not going that way. That is a dangerous road to go, especially since the light artillery keeps firing lovely bolts that way. I actually don't prefer to use From the Shadows on long distance where target is aggressively moving. I have a greater chance of missing that target. I personally like these archers. They are resilient thanks to the shields which the Barbarians have. The reason I don't use Crippling Shot here is because my units are stacked, and Crippling Shot fires a low angle arrow, I mean volley. Basically, it will wound all the friendly units along your way, so you don't want to use it as long as there is someone in your way. It might be an excellent thing to fire at the back of your enemies. It can work there. It can also ruin the charges. This is what I'm doing right here. This is actually what I usually don't suggest doing. I thought that these spearmen might be successful, so I activated From the Shadows and started doing some slight friendly fire and damaging the spearmen. If you want to fire something over your friendly troops, make sure it's focus fire. Everything else pretty much isn't worth it. Personally, I never use From the Shadows when my target is far away. It is never that good. I mean, you have a great chance of hitting them if they keep moving in a single direction. But then again, if it's a smart opponent, it will learn and adapt to your attacks. So he will basically avoid your long-range fire. Perhaps it doesn't even need to be that long range, considering all the arrows fly from high elevation, high angle. And of course the light artillery, that bastard. This is what I'm actually talking about. You see these archer fighters coming on me. They're using From the Shadows, and it does have long range, but it is easy to dodge. Although at this moment I was a bit more concerned about the light artillery. If we actually talk about archers in general, streets are a great place to hide them. You can put them behind narrow streets and wait for your opponents to get close. As long as someone keeps scouting for you or keeps vision on the opponents, you might be rather successful staying behind the narrow streets where no one can see you. And this here is a nice example why I play swordsman or one unit of infantry with my archers. Oh, he used dash, so he can't charge and I can easily charge into him. He pretty much ruined it for himself. Dash silences your unit. You can't use any abilities for 5-second period. So now I'm going to pretty much show where you should use from the shadows. You don't want to fire from behind your friendly troops. That is a horrible choice, even with this reduced dispersion. But something like this, when they are fighting side by side, this is an excellent place to use from the shadows, and of course the haste at the same time to increase your damage output. At tier 10 this thing gets even worse. You get like 50% armor piercing damage modifier. This is a perfect place to use it. Also some focus fire every now and then. The reason I don't use my broadhead arrows is simple. I usually keep those to counterfight any archers I see. On low tiers I do prefer the light arrows, which will fly further and cause a bit less damage, but above tier 4 I usually prefer to get a bit extra damage out of my arrows. So this is interesting. That isn't the only interesting part. Look at this right now. Yeah. That is so confusing, like, what? But then again, I don't mind as long as they are in range and I can do some decent damage with from the shadows. This is how you want to use from the shadows. You want to use it at location where you're not doing any significant friendly fire, or minimal at least. And at the same time, it would be great if the targets would be stationary. So mostly engaged opponents or some stationary ranged units, perhaps catapults or light artilleries. So I am still doing some significant damage. I didn't expect them to charge my way. I was actually just hoping to help this guy as much as I could with my infantry. I sent my infantry in just because I was sure that the opposing horsemen were far away. But since most of these opponents here are armored Roman legionnaires, it is extremely hard to deal with them. They have a lot of missile block, they have a lot of damage resistances. It is very hard to fight against them, and they will probably remain being very nasty even without the Testudo. So there are a few other things I want to bring note to when you're playing Ambiorix or Barbarian, or perhaps in some cases even any archers. First of all is that crippling shot is an excellent tool for ruining charges. Here I'm even using my infantry as a bait to harass these guys, using my focus fire and so. But then again, since it is Germanicus and he's a lot stronger than I am trying to pull out. And this is the nasty tactic I hate with the armored legionnaires or Roman swordsmen in general. They're gonna push into you and they're gonna stab you. And that stab does so much damage. Okay, so this is where I'm using the crippling shot. He used the charge, but it was a moment too late. If he would have charged a bit earlier, he might have gotten me. But not like that. So these swordsmen are nasty as hell. And just to be sure that we could rout them, I'm trying to send even my own archers in to fight them from the rear, but as long as the horsemen are as well. Because alone, I can't do enough moral damage. So even though the moral keeps shrinking, it remains at that. Oh my, it is on 1 moral, come on. Don't fear to send your archers in and use crippling shot to defend your own archers. You can easily use it against horsemen, and if you have any support nearby, you can just use crippling shot, delay them, and let your friendlies to catch them up. Crippling shot has a lot of uses. You can shoot your opponents in the back, you can stagger your engaging opponents, you can just delay them for a light artillery or catapult. You just might want to hit the rear of some disengaging horsemen to delay them and let your friendly horsemen catch them up, or there are just so many ways. Your imagination is the only thing that is stopping you. There are several differences between the Barbarian and Greek archers, starting from commanders to units. The main difference between the units is that Barbarian archers have shields, so they are more resilient against ranged fire and perhaps even melee attacks. But then again, while Barbarians have better defense, they have slightly shorter range. Everything else is with minor differences. Even the range actually is a minor difference. So this was pretty much it. Haste is an incredible tool that you can often use to move yourself around or just to increase your damage output. Crippling Shot is an interesting tool with a lot of options, but requires often enough a lot of teamwork as well. From the Shadows is a very tactical tool, which is probably best used against stationary targets or perhaps naive opponents, whom against you can easily use it from a distance. There can be several uses for From the Shadows and Crippling Shot, but these are just how I basically use them. This is the basic understanding of how they work. Personally, I think these are one of the best archers around right now. They might not have as huge tactical burst damage as the Greek archers do, but they have their very own tactical value, which can often be an annoyance or utilized in proper teamwork. Anyways, don't forget to subscribe, and thanks for watching.